Hard times make strong men.
Strong men produce good times.
Soft times create soft men.
Weak men create hard times. This old saying has been picked up in recent years by figures all across the manosphere, including the Honorable Joseph Rogaine.
So have you ever done DMT?
As well as Hamza Ahmed, a self-improvement YouTuber and fellow Wojak enthusiast.
Hard times create strong men.
And it's his video, cheerfully titled, "I think the darkest time of our lives is coming," that I want to focus on today as a jumping off point to examine what I'm going to call the hard man hypothesis. But before we look into its credibility, we have to examine where this phrase comes from. And it turns out that that is easier said than done. To find the origin of this quote, I had to do a lot of digging, but it turns out most scholars agree that it originated somewhere between, nah, I'm just messing with you. This quote comes from a post-apocalyptic fictional novel called Those Who Remain, published in 2016. So it's not like this is really a piece of ancient wisdom, but putting that aside, is it true? To do that, let's look at a commonly cited example of this idea in action, which Hamza himself mentions: ancient Rome.
You can look through times in history, and it's always the same pattern that, like, a rising force, I say the Romans, they rise, they conquer. A line of strong men, like, rise the country, rise the nation. Because they've won, they get comfortable. And that's when they start celebrating. They are now in a time of, like, ultimate pleasure and reward and hedonistic pleasure.
As the story goes, Rome was a great empire built by strong men. But it turns out it was a little too great, because the people started to get soft and a little fruity.
You need to leave!
And it turns out the Romans thought this way too. Roman historian Tacitus would often rail against the decadence of his day and saw Rome as a failing society. And it's not hard to see why, when you consider the fact that he lived around the time of Claudius, Caligula, and Nero, the three Roman emperors most associated with this degeneracy. But there's only one problem with this. All of these people lived in the 1st century AD, a full 400 years before the fall of the Western Roman Empire. All the stuff that Hamza says causes nations to fail was going on at the very start of the empire, not the decline. We see the same thing with Julius Caesar, who often praised the masculine, warlike nature of his Germanic opponents, while proceeding to crush those same masculine, warlike opponents in battle time and time again. As it turns out, people have pretty much always said that the younger generation is the weakest, most decadent one yet. The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. Apparently, humans just keep getting weaker and weaker every generation. It's a marvel we've made it this far. So, okay, it seems like history doesn't always conform so neatly to this weak man, strong man dichotomy. But let's put all that aside for now and look at a more modern example, which Hamza actually talks about himself: Ukraine.
Hard times create strong men. The Ukraine president, Zelensky, is a strong man.
Sure, Zelensky is a strong leader. There's no way around that. But we can't forget about the rest of the equation. If we were in the hard times create strong men quadrant, then we must have just left the part where weak men create hard times. So I just have to ask, how have the men of Ukraine been weak to cause this war? It seems like this hard time has been created by Vladimir Putin. And if I recall, isn't his whole brand being a tough guy? It kind of seems like this hard time has been brought on by a strong man. But wait, that's not on the chart anywhere. And according to the next phase of this model, these strong men are primed to usher in good times. But that doesn't really make sense to me. Sure, countless Ukrainian men have risen to the challenge and are fighting to defend their country. And that's really admirable. But I don't think this war is going to leave behind a country of disciplined, super soldier, strong men. It's going to leave behind a lot of men with PTSD. It's going to leave behind a devastated country with trauma that may last generations. If you asked Ukrainians, I'm sure most of them would be content to stay as weak men without this conflict tearing their country apart. But hey, if you're so convinced that this war is a great opportunity to become a strong man, the Foreign Legion is taking applications. Go get them, Tiger. So, okay, this model is pretty bad at describing history or geopolitics or pretty much anything. But the practicality of it is not the only thing I have an issue with. By the logic of the hard man hypothesis, if you want to prevent the bad times, you have to make sure there's as many strong men around as possible. Let's listen to what Hamza has to say about what a society of strong men would look like.
So the Romans conquered, and eventually they live in such a prosperous, peaceful time where now they can eat like foods high in fat and sugar. And then what happens? They get destroyed. They get dominated by the nation that isn't indulging in those pleasures, by the nation that's still monogamous, by the nation that's still religious, by the nation that's still intolerant. A nation is born patriarchal and dies matriarchal. So a nation is born patriarchal, that means it's born through men. It's born through hard men who rule. Men rule. Christianity called God the Father. Feminism killed the Father. So what's happening to society now? Like, the family's not really that important. You're seeing a bunch of like different like alternative type of families and everything. And, you know, in a sense, like, yeah, respect to them, give them rights and everything. But like, it's very difficult to state some things because there is also like this level of like PC culture where like you can't speak ill of the new modern sort of like things of like LGBT, and I don't have anything ill to say of them at all, but it's kind of like, I'm not saying it for me because I get cancelled, so I'm going to watch what I say, but like Stefan Arnio, the author, he says that that's linked to like the death of the society because that destroys the family. If there's one thing you can boil the nation falling, like Rome falling, or one of the Western countries falling, it quite literally is all based down to women's sexuality being freed. On a first glance, it seems sexist, and it seems like, no, we want to be feminist and we want to like, give them equal rights and everything. And in a sense, you know, we want people to be treated with fairness. Like every time I have to give a disclaimer and say like, I'm not exactly like anti-feminist. I'm certainly not like anti-women. Like I get this question quite often, and people say like, do you actually hate women? I was like, bro, I'm telling you right now, like, I love and respect like the feminine energy more than like, you don't even understand femininity, bro. But that being said, me saying that feminism was like somewhat of like a bad, like catastrophic influence on the nations, like, it isn't me being anti-women. It's just realizing the consequences of like not so much equal rights and fairness, that 100% like, you know, we should have had that a long time ago, but it is specifically to do with sexuality.
To me, this is the most damning feature of the video, but it's also the most clarifying. Here, Hamza is laying out exactly what it would mean to take the hard times create strong men paradigm seriously. And it's actually pretty simple. Societies with strong men are more patriarchal. They restrict the rights of women and gay people. And I think this part illustrates a really interesting tension. And it seems to be a tension between what Hamza believes on the surface and his moral intuition that seems to recognize the logical implications of those beliefs. Hamza brings up a claim by Stefan Arnio that LGBT people are causing the death of society, but then quickly distances himself from the author and states that he has nothing bad to say about gay people and that they deserve rights. Which is great, but it doesn't make sense. If LGBT people are causing civilization to crumble, then their behavior should be discouraged by any means necessary. If you truly believe that gay people are a corrosive force that has the potential to destroy society, then it is a totally logical conclusion to take away their rights. Either LGBT people are fine and we should let them be, or they're a threat to civilization, in which case we need to deal with them. You can't have it both ways. Hamza does the same thing with women's rights. He stresses that he's not anti-woman, he just has a bone to pick with feminism. And he doesn't want to restrict women's rights, he just wants to restrict their sexuality. Except, there's no distinction between those two statements. We have to consider what it would actually mean to restrict women's sexuality. It would mean taking away their ability to choose what they get to do with their body and who they get to associate with. So restricting women's sexuality is just a euphemism for taking away their bodily autonomy, which seems like a pretty fundamental right to me. Now, Hamza can say he's not sexist, that he has respect for women. But if you advocate for a society where women's rights are restrained, that makes you sexist. To even conscience this idea, you have to believe that one group, men, should get to decide what another group, women, get to do. If you believe that, that makes you sexist. By definition.
I love and respect like the feminine energy.
You know, and a lot of people say I'm racist. I'm not racist, okay? I have the utmost respect for black people, okay? You don't even understand the black energy like I do, all right? But look, we just have to acknowledge biological fact here, which is that when you look to history, the most successful societies restrict the rights of black people. I mean, it's just a fact.
Likewise, Hamza stresses that he has nothing against LGBT people, but when you uncritically parrot the talking points of an author who says that they're the downfall of civilization, what am I supposed to say to that? Look, anyone who knows me knows I got nothing against gay people, all right? I suspect that my goldfish is gay, but I just kind of think that they're causing society to crumble, that's all. I just kind of think that if our society fails, it's probably going to be their fault. You know, that's just what I think. I know how this looks, man. To you, I may just be a whiny SJW triggered about the truth. Triggered by the truth about femoids. No, you can't just take away rights from women and gay people.
In a sense, like, yeah, respect to them, give them rights and everything, but like, Adonis.
So for now, let's set aside all that liberal BS about rights and sexism, and let's get down to the cold, hard facts. I disagree with the idea that letting women and gay people have rights weakens society. In his video, you know, Hamza just kind of treats this point as a given. Despite the fact that our current civilization has like the highest standard of living, lowest crime rates, and healthiest populations pretty much ever, all while being more accepting of women and gay rights than any previous society. And I would argue that's because of our tolerance, not in spite of it. I mean, treating a whole half of our population as equals and allowing them to contribute fully to society has probably boosted our productivity just a little bit. But I guess the bad times are just around the corner. We just gotta wait for the other shoe to drop, guys. Trust me, things are getting way worse. We should have never let those broads out of the kitchen.
Weak men will not destroy society, but will lead to society being destroyed. Weak men create hard times.
So that sounds pretty bad. What do we do about that? Well, as far as solutions go, there really isn't one, according to Hamza. The only thing to do is to make sure that you're a strong man for when the hard times come. Now, this is my problem with self-improvement more broadly. It presents individual solutions to systemic problems. The problem is that men have become weak, and the solution is for men to individually become stronger. People nowadays are fat, and the solution is to get fitter. People nowadays are not starting families like they used to, so the solution is to increase your SMV, get your grind set up, and attract a partner. Now, I'm not against self-improvement as a concept. I have videos up advocating for it. But if you simply promote personal change while ignoring the wider social factors that cause those issues in the first place, you're just treating the symptom, not the disease. Like, if you really thought society was going down the toilet, degenerating rapidly, wouldn't you want to advocate for policy change to address that? And no, I'm not talking about taking away rights from women and gay people, okay? Let's leave that off the table for now, all right? Just ask yourself, why are so many Americans fat nowadays? Have Americans suddenly evolved over the past 50 years to be lazier? No, of course not. The real reason is that America's food system is garbage and our healthcare system is garbage. I mean, our government literally subsidizes foods that give us heart disease. I'm not saying you shouldn't eat clean and work out, but what I am saying is if you think this situation can be boiled down to people today are just lazy, you're missing the point. Another one, why are people not starting families like they used to? Do people just not feel like it? Or could it have something to do with the fact that the price of having a family relative to inflation has increased dramatically, whereas wages have pretty much stayed flat? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't try to work hard to provide for your family. What I am saying is, if you think this can be boiled down to people today are hedonistic and no longer care about family, you're missing the point. So why am I speaking about Hamza specifically? Because there's a lot of other people that are promoting this narrative that I could be talking about. The reason I'm talking about Hamza is I actually like a lot of his content. Now, if anybody else was talking like this, it would be really easy to write them off as just a weirdo that ate too many red pills. But I actually think Hamza is doing good work. His approach to self-improvement that centers mental health is a really important message that I don't think enough young men have been hearing. But I just think this video shows bro science has its limits. And I wish I could spin you a counter narrative that's just as catchy and concise, but that's not really how history or sociology works. Because the truth is, societies succeed and fail for a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with how hard the men are. You'll notice, like in my video, I've brought up a fair number of graphs, statistics, and quotes, which Hamza doesn't do once. The closest he comes is referencing this book with like 2 trigger warnings on the cover. And I get, it's not just Hamza, it's Hamza Unfiltered. So these are like off the cuff, unscripted videos. I just think topics like these need to be treated with a little more consideration than catchy slogans about hard men. There's nothing wrong with wanting men to be strong, but when that's the beginning and end of your political philosophy, it can lead you to some pretty dark places. So I guess the reason that I chose this video specifically to talk about is that it's sort of Hamza's first foray into politics and social analysis. But I think the line of thought that he pursues in this video is a misstep. And in my mind, this attitude represents a missed opportunity in the self-improvement community. Hamza often talks about self-improvement being step 1. Once you improve yourself, you spread the message to your friends and those around you, and you help them improve. You become a leader. And I think it's a really beautiful idea to bring others up like that. And I would like to see it taken a step further. My goal is not only to improve myself, but society as a whole. I want to pass on a world to my children that I can be proud of. And the way that we're going to do that is by making sure that the planet is clean and the environment is taken care of. Ensuring that all working people have enough to provide for their families and caring for the most vulnerable in our society. But I'll tell you one thing. We're not going to get there by telling each other reductive, ahistorical fairy tales about hard men. I'm going to end this video with a quote that I found a while back that I think really encapsulates this whole situation. And it goes something like this.
Do the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it. Mwah.
I hope you like this video. If you like it, then subscribe. If you liked it a lot and you want to like stay around, you can join the Discord. The link for that is in the description. Along with, by the way, all the sources for this video. All the like data that I cite, the links for those are in the description.